Today we have Dharmesh here of Forward Partners. Thank you so much for being here.
Pleasure.
Let's kind of go into your role at Forward Partners. You're the product partner, right?
Yes.
And you kind of work on the agency side. Would you be able to kind of explain how that works?
Basically at Forward Partners we invest in pre-seed companies, which is founders. Generally they've got an idea, they've got no tech team, they've got no product, but they've just been thinking about this idea for a while. And so roughly half of our investments are at that stage, and they'll come in, they'll sit with us for 12 months. My team, we've got engineers, designers, UX, growth, marketing, talent, kind of everything that you need to get a startup off the ground. And I'll kind of act as their head of product for the first 12 months, and helping them. They've got an idea, but they come to us often because they don't know how to actually translate that into a product and to build it. And so my role is to work with them and figure out that journey, right? To go and build it. And then the second, we also invest about half of our investments in seed stage companies. So that is when they will have some kind of product, but very young company. And with those companies, we'll be doing more tactical projects alongside doing a lot of product coaching and helping them actually build out a product function. So it's quite an interesting, varied role.
I can imagine. Is this something that you kind of have to continuously remind founders of when it comes to product?
So I mean, I guess our first mantra is really get to know your customer. Because actually what you find is, on the founder's journey, and I've been on it a couple of times, it's like you have an idea in your head and it just brews. You're like, there's a problem, there's an idea, I've got it. And then the idea gets bigger and bigger in your head. And actually in some ways you find there's a bit of resistance with wanting to actually find out if that idea is any good or not. You just want to build it. You don't want to ask people, is it a good idea? You want to start building it. And so you build up all this confirmation bias, where even when you hear information, it's all skewed because you're not listening to the right things.
You're listening to what you want to listen to.
And then when they come to us, they are like, right, I've raised money, I want to go and build. And the thing that I'm saying is, you need to go and really understand your customers at a much deeper level. And with that information, we can go and build a much better product. And that just continues, right, over and over again. Like every time you build something, you just want to get more feedback, keep talking to your customers, because that way you build something that actually serves them. And
you're kind of transitioning into like the MVP stage. I mean, usually there's traditional advice, say from Reid Hoffman, if you're not embarrassed by your first product, you haven't launched early enough. I mean, I guess there's all these sayings and people have different perspectives. I guess different perspectives are true in different contexts. In terms of building out the MVP, are there certain things that founders should be testing and kind of understanding when speaking to their customer to kind of get the ground level truths?
So I guess the first phase for me is always like, try to speak to sort of between 10 and 30 customers, like potential customers, before you build anything. And really understand the problems that they face, like trying to solve the problem that you wish to solve. And that will give you immediately like a very deep understanding of, and it doesn't take very long, but it's enough to go, okay, is there an actual problem and what are all the subtleties of how they're trying to solve it? And then you can start brainstorming yourself what solutions might actually make this experience way, way better. Right? Because you understand the tech, they don't understand the tech. And then when you start thinking about your MVP, or like, what do I launch with, right? How do I get this into the market? I guess a big mantra for me is like how to get some value out there without trying to build too much software. So if you start building lots and lots of software, then all that software has an inertia, which makes it hard to change. Even though they say, you can change software and you can change direction. Once you start writing lots of code, you will inevitably get slower. It's harder to change. It takes its own path. So I'm always thinking about how do we to test out ideas without building too much product. And then that might depend on the type of business. So for example, if it's a marketplace company, very often you can just launch a marketplace company just by doing like a concierge service.
Yeah.
So, for example, we invested in a company called Lexu, which is like a marketplace for lawyers.
Okay.
And it started off with small businesses. And you know, when the founder first came to us, I have to build all this product. I've got to build messaging, and I've got. And I was like, you don't need any of that.
Yeah.
We're going to build a homepage and a form.
Yeah.
And literally, we'll start driving traffic to it.
Yeah.
Off the back of that, he got, you know, we did it. We sent some traffic over about a week. He got 40 responses in a form.
Yeah.
He then went and found lawyers and said, "Hey, I've got a job for you. Would you like the job?"
Yeah.
And he was like, "If you take the job, I want 10%."
Yeah.
And so, you know, within a week, they were like, "Yeah, I'll take the job." He matched them up over email. Job completed. He got paid.
Yeah.
And I was like, "Okay, I think we're done. All we need to do now is just keep this loop going." And then pick out all the bits that need to be automated, and start automating them.
Yeah,
like, and that's how it started. So from in his head, from a very complicated thing, became a very simple thing.
Yeah.
But then, actually, what was really useful was, for example, with those early customers, we started to understand who had a good experience or not. It turns out that people that had 3 quotes from lawyers in 24 hours, were just like blown away.
Wow.
And so we were like, okay, fine. How do we do that at scale?
Yeah.
And that became the product focus, right? And if you'd gone and built a lot of products, I don't think we'd ever got to that insight.
Yeah. And the other thing I wanted to kind of touch on, going back actually, where we first started, was in terms of testing assumptions. I mean, a lot of the EF guys are massive fans of the book, The Mom Test.
Yes.
Because it enables them to gain unbiased perspectives. Because generally when, I mean, I've done this before, I've had like tiny failed startups before, and what kind of happened was, it was confirmation bias. I was looking for answers that I wanted, and so that I wasn't getting accurate ground truths. I mean, is there something to that? Is there something, like, do you guys kind of make founders aware of like the type of questions they need to be asking their customers?
So, I'm a big fan of the Mum Test. We also, so before we start, I said we do these like 10 to 30 interviews. Typically they're timeline interviews. So it's basically, we write a discussion guide. We try to find people that have solved that problem before. So we invested in a company that sell plants online. So it's like, right, can we go and find 30 people that tried to buy plants before? And the whole question is, when you meet these people, is tell me about that journey in detail, in very fine detail. And so you're not asking them for, tell me about whether you like my idea, tell me about what you wish would happen. It's basically saying, tell me about what happened. And so it's very, you know, that is the truth of what happened. And then it's up to us as a team to go, wow, look how broken that journey is. They had to get in an Uber taxi because they couldn't get a car, you know, so then it's like, okay, fine, we need to do delivery. They bought plants and they died. You know, and what was the emotional state around that, but also why did they die? And it was because they bought plants based on aesthetics rather than, oh, I've got a place which hasn't got a lot of light and actually only these plants apply to me.
Oh wow.
So they weren't, you know, so basically, so and we knew that. They're telling us these stories and the stories are true, right? That's exactly what happened. And then off the back of that, we can then go, okay, we're going to develop something which needs to have delivery, needs to help people buy the right plants according to the conditions of the space. And then they can pick on aesthetics, right? And then also we need to support them with help that means that they can look after their plants. So, you know, all of that comes from asking lots of deep questions about their experiences and very open questions. And we rarely ask them like, and what would you wish? That's not what we're doing. The next phase would be, right, let's go and ideate ourselves, and then we might show people, actually we're thinking of this, this and this, and getting their reaction. But it's very rare that you're asking them for solutions. They don't understand what AI can do, they don't understand what tech can do. That's our job.
A lot more attention is being focused on deep tech ideas now. So, I mean, what are your thoughts on the amount of money coming into this tech scene? And
so, I mean, I think that, you know, I've been in the London tech scene for quite a while, and it's gone through a few waves. But you know, every time it feels like, you know, we're now getting much bigger companies coming out of London, growing big very, very fast. Deliveroo's, TransferWise, Monzo, right? And actually, now you've got second-time founders who know how to execute. They've been through the journey, and we're still behind the valley, but that's starting to happen.
Yeah.
Alongside, you've got Facebooks and Googles,
Yeah.
and people are leaving those companies to start startups. And
Yeah.
they already know how to execute.
Yeah.
So that's, I think, one piece. I'd say on the we started off when we first started Forward Partners, like focusing on e-commerce.
Okay.
Because the trends in the UK was like people are very comfortable buying things online, so it's a good place to start those kind of businesses.
Yeah.
But now that we've kind of moved that to doing a lot of applied AI companies, because that trend is like coming into play, and actually the UK have got a lot of talent in that space. It's one of the leaders in the space of like generating people coming out of university, really strong at doing AI. So I think that generally leads to actually what we're seeing is I see the quality of founders in general just higher, and I think part of that is a lot of information on how to build startups, how to do it is now out there in the market, alongside second-time founders and experience, being able to help and mentor like new founders. Yeah. So that whole ecosystem is evolving, and what you're seeing is better execution, higher, being able to grow faster, and kind of leveling up on the skills required to build a startup.
And do you feel like as time goes on, like the need for a company will be more deep tech talent now, because the depth and the complexity of the problems that startups are now solving are obviously increasing. So
definitely there's a trend of like, there's a huge opportunity now that AI is getting to that point where it can actually solve real problems.
Yeah.
So, that inevitably requires people to get skilled up. I think when it first kind of took off, there was a very limited pool of talent. Yeah. And so that's why you see all these like acquisitions where very early companies, but actually it was like mainly a talent acquisition, but paying quite a premium just to get the talent on board. Yeah. And over time, I imagine more and more people will just start studying that stuff because they're like, well, we study AI, I'm guaranteed to go and get a decent job. Yeah. So that will sort of level off a little bit. It's always going to be a limited pool. I'd say the trends I'm seeing is definitely AI and deep tech and applying that, and then also much more operationally heavy businesses. Really? Because the simpler ones have gone. Yeah. The easy ones have gone. So Deliveroo is an operationally heavy business, right? 3-sided marketplace, managing all these drivers. The easy kind of software marketplaces like eBay or Airbnb, like they've gone, and now it's like, okay, we have to do more work to get these things off the ground.
Yeah, that was interesting because yesterday we spoke to a founder, a CEO of Poplar, which is an AR marketplace, and they match companies and AR developers to develop their products, but to develop AR products for them. But what was interesting about that company was the company wasn't just a marketplace. They were involved in the purchasing process in terms of educating the companies on what to look for and how to look for it. So there wasn't money wasted on one side. So like the depth of the customer journey is obviously increasing, and the need for that is actually increasing now as well, right? Yeah. What are the mindset shifts in the processes founders probably need to focus on when scaling their company and kind of scaling product?
And so one mindset shift is going, it used to be me that makes all the kind of intimate details of the product. Yeah. And now, as the kind of founder or the leader, my role is to actually set the big vision. Yeah. And set some processes like OKRs, saying this is the direction I want the company to go in. These are the particular targets that we want to happen. And then individual squads like product teams, giving them the freedom to actually go and figure out how to solve those problems. Yeah. Because ultimately they're going to be closer to the problem than the founder is, and that's a transition that founders need to make. They need to bring in like someone who really understands product, and then kind of build up this kind of squad structure where and enable them to actually do that work and be creative. So a nice story is like at TransferWise, like the CEO, and I think they've done it really well. If the CEO has an idea, and he wants to get it done, like the product team just have the authority to go, that's not on our list if you want to do it, there's the code, go and do it yourself. Right? And that is a very mature product organization. And recently I've been, it's Gibson Biddle from Netflix. Has a really nice sort of product strategy process, which is kind of tied to OKRs, but just a nice way to scale out an organization, understand what streams that you have, and how you kind of divide up your teams to kind of tackle them in a nice way.
Do you have any advice for founders in terms of letting go? I mean, I'm sure that process is quite painful in terms of, at first they have to hire the talent, but then the other side is the emotional attachment that you have, because obviously intimately you know the nuances of your customer in a lot more detail. I mean, do you have any advice in terms of the handover process?
So I guess the one thing I would say is like, so letting go of the little details of product doesn't mean that you're not involved in product strategy. Doesn't mean you don't get to look at the product and review it and have a say. That's like, there's some founders who are like, they weren't great at product in the beginning, and for them it makes perfect sense hiring a product person who knows what they're doing, and they'll be quite happy actually to go, wow, I can now focus on other bits of the business that I'm strong at. This is your role. Otherwise you get very strong product based founders, but they still will find themselves pulled into like, right, I've got investor meetings, I've got to hire, I've got to build out another function, and they will hire in, this is a mistake actually, they hire in a head of product, but they don't let go enough. And so it's, no head of product will join a company and go, actually I'm just being told what to do. Like that's it's going to be hard to retain people in that kind of environment. But what you can do is, as I say, like, let the heads of products kind of run the business, but you're still reviewing products, you're part of that journey, and just by understanding that how, as any individual, can you make great product decisions when you don't have as much contact with the customer as you did. And who your customer might be when you first started may have changed. They've probably evolved, the market outside has changed, and so is my organization like able to make the best decision? And that's often actually people closer to the problem.
I can imagine. Are there times where founders are solving the wrong problem for the customers, and is there a way to kind of, apart from breaking everything down and starting again, is there a process to kind of work your way out of that mess?
I think you're more likely to hit these plateaus if you don't have all these feedback systems in place. If you don't have like regular contact with customers, as you say, like, does your product design, do you have that in your business, and are they on a regular basis feeding back all this either qualitative or quantitative data in order to you to go, are we on the right direction? And that's it's an art for a founder, because obviously they have to be stubborn on their vision, but on the details, right, they have to be flexible.
You've been in product for a long time, and what's fascinating about you is you've worked on a breadth of projects with a ton of startups. Have your beliefs about product or your thoughts about product kind of evolved and changed over the last, say, 5 to 10 years?
So obviously there are, I think the quality level as the game's gone up. So if you're launching any kind of consumer business, like thinking about brand, thinking about how you present yourself, the stories that you tell are all really, really important. And like that has definitely changed. You can't just push something live that you feel really embarrassed about if you work in the consumer space. You got to be thinking about like, will it, because customers are way more savvy now. They're like, it needs to look legit from day one in order for me to actually engage, otherwise I don't have the trust. Obviously if you're doing like a B2B and it's a very technical thing, it might be actually, I don't need it to look amazing, I'm going to use solving my problem. But I say even in that space, like that whole consumer trend is moving, right? Like now you're seeing great B2B companies like Slack, like, but from a brand perspective, like they've nailed it on top. So they're also taking that on board. I'd also say like the sophistication around growth has changed a lot. So there's a big interrelationship between product and growth. Because you can grow by getting new acquisition channels, you can grow by improving your product, and there's so many like some of the channels that used to work before no longer work as well. Like Google's expensive, Facebook's expensive, and so you really need to get into kind of a growth mindset of testing lots of channels, thinking about not just channels but my products and how can I actually like improve and tweak in order to like find incremental gains that mean that your CPAs suddenly drop to a point where actually that you can scale. So that there's a trend around just making sure that products and growth work really well together. And I guess, you know, on top of that, like I come from a gaming background and all the kind of behavioral psychology, game design, thinking about how you create engagement, delight, and creating loops within your products is moved from just games to like everything.
It's a precarious relationship between product and growth as well, because you know, like you said, there are different channels that used to work in 2012. Facebook was extremely effective, but now it's not so much effective in depending on what you're selling. In terms of the role of the product manager, have you seen it evolve?
Yeah, totally. So, you know, I'd say like, and it's evolved quicker in the US than it has in the UK.
Really, how so?
So, for example, I was just reading an article a few weeks ago that you know in the US they will hire their first product hire like within the first 10 employees.
Oh wow!
In Europe, it'll be like in the first 30. The ratio of product managers to the engineering team in the Europe is much higher, and in the US it's like they always have a product manager for like every 10. So they value, and the pay is higher in the US, so they value product more and understand the positive effect it has. I'd also say like, you know, like here I still see some product managers who really are kind of project managers, kind of delivery people. And actually, you know, real product managers, they're just worried about like why are we building this thing and what is it, and then less worried about how it's going to actually get executed. And that's more moved into like the engineering teams. So, you know, a good product manager is spending all of their time talking to customers, thinking about new solutions, trying to prove if it's the right thing, and then at that point, like, you know, delivery happens, they're like, right, let's execute on it. But their job is to make sure they're building the right product. Whereas historically it was much more about like a stakeholder says, I want you to build X, and then they go and build X. That's, you know, and then it may or may not work, but that's not the role of the product manager, right? They are meant to figure out what to build.
And do you have any I mean, I remember there was a tweet from Fred Destin recently, and he talked about the shortage of product managers in Europe specifically. Do you have any advice for people wanting to go into this sector?
I mean, I would say like, so I've been, you know, so Product Tank is like a meetup that happens in London. Off the back of that, it's been going for quite a while. It's a really great community. You get to learn a lot and talk to people. Off the back of that, they created the Mind the Product conference, which was the first product management conference in the whole of the world. It was in London. So I actually think that there are some extremely talented product people in London, and actually the scene is more evolved than what you would think. You still get these big organizations that have product managers that really are delivery managers, but there is another layer of product people in London that are talking about it in the right way. So, you know, getting into products, I think that the role itself is getting more recognized, and kind of, you know, people get into products in all different manners. It's kind of because you don't kind of fit into any other bucket. Sometimes you end up in products. But you know, so Mind the Product do training courses, which you know is a great resource. There's the Product Tank meetups, and you know, I think General Assembly do a product course. So I'm starting to see more people now who starting off their career as product people. Whereas before it was like, no, I used to be an engineer, or mainly it was I used to be an engineer, and now I've moved into product. And now you see people from like, I used to do marketing, and now I do product. And that's all cool. But now I'm seeing people that go, I graduated and I'm doing product, and so that's quite new.
What's the? I mean, you've worked with a breadth of founders and startup founders. Well, what's been like the toughest product challenge you've kind of come across, and kind of how you overcome it?
So I've worked with lots of different types of companies. I'd say that before we did quite a few e-commerce businesses. Those to me feel really easy now.
Oh, really?
Like, because the product from a software point of view, they're all kind of the same. And it's more like, actually, have I made a good product to sell?
Yeah.
And is my growth engine working well? And that's actually more of the challenge rather than product. Marketplaces are super interesting because you've got to manage supply and demand.
Yeah.
And how you do that is how you get them started is always quite interesting.
Yeah.
But as I said, the trend there is all the easy ones have gone.
Yeah.
And so you normally either have to do something more complicated.
Yeah.
Which is, maybe the supply, for example, Choreo Kids, they have to create and train their own supply. That didn't exist before. It'd be like, oh, it's just a marketplace and there's already all this supply and all this demand and I just bring it together.
Yeah.
Now you have to think, how do I create supply as opposed to just bring it on a platform?
Yeah.
So those are like way more challenging, operationally heavy businesses, but you need that to scale. And then I'd say for me, like the hardest ones are when you're trying to build a engaging mobile app where the software is the product, and you're trying to build in all these like game loops or engagement loops, and they are like way more risky. They may work, they may not work. When they do work, they take off like crazy. For me, those are still like the hard ones, and I look at get the gaming world a lot for inspiration to think about those kind of businesses.
That's really interesting you say that. So like how different industries and the way to do things in different industries kind of spearhead best practices across different industry verticals. I mean, you said the gaming sector, you've seen that type of mindset and that type of process kind of proliferate across startups. Do you think there are specific industries that are really ahead when it comes to building product? You mentioned gaming, but are there any others that you've kind of come across that are quite ahead? I mean, our fintech scene is just thriving here in London. Way ahead of Silicon Valley.
Yeah, and I think that's because of the the kind of the environment that they came into, right? Like, London is a financial capital. They made a lot of regulatory changes here quicker than they did in the US, and so it's kind of a nice place for those types of companies to start. And by definition, there's such big markets that the money went in and good people went in to start executing on them. So I think the reason why they started here is not because of great products. It was that alongside the fact that London is a good place to build fintech businesses. I think like in many different like verticals, you get good examples of good products happening. I did, at the time, I think with gaming, like they were, because it's quite a creative, challenging, technically difficult business to create a compelling game. They were quite advanced in terms of like A/B testing and building like really engaging products. But now you see examples of great execution, I think, across everywhere. Different verticals.
I think that kind of wraps up in terms of the product types of questions. I want to kind of know about you personally. You recently told me you went on a vacation, which was pretty rare for you. I mean, what kind of inspires you to do the work that you do at Forward?
So I guess I started off doing AI at uni. Way before it became like a hot thing now. And then very lucky to go and work in some really interesting companies. When I first started, we were doing artificial life technologies, neural networks, gaming, super fun things that you could go home and tell your parents about. I made this game, like that's cool, like that's what I played as a kid. I'm actually making them. I spent a lot of time working in, I always said like I want to work in things which I feel proud talking to people about. So I worked in the BBC on media stuff, where you could always go and say, hey, I did that, it's on telly, or there's a website and it's reaching a lot of people. And then I did a few startups, and inevitably you make your failures. The first startup I did, we did it with some friends. I was coding like so hard that I got RSI all over my shoulders.
Really?
And literally couldn't touch a mouse for like 6 months. And the second startup, it did better than the first one. Again, but made different mistakes. I learned a lot about, I should have spoken to more customers. I should have done this. And then I was very lucky to work at Mind Candy, which was like a very early stage. I joined them when they were very early, and it took off from 20 people to like 300 over a couple of years. Very, very fast growth. Super exciting, like space that I loved, like kids entertainment. And again, learned a lot of things. And then when I kind of moved on from there, I was like thinking, okay, what do I want to do now? I've done a couple of startups. I've just had a kid. Do I want to do another startup again? And I was like, well, I kind of do, but at the same time I know that how much energy that takes. And I didn't actually have an idea that I wanted to work on. And then I met Nick, the managing partner of Forward Partners. Said we're doing this new model of like VC plus startup studio. And I felt like I'm in a place where, wow, if something like this had existed where you could raise some money but also get all this help, my last startup would have been way more successful. Than, because I was a solo founder, I was doing it by myself. I was using like remote workers, and and I still got to a decent outcome. But I knew that like, wow, I could have done that better. And so for me, it was like, here's a place where I can actually help other people make less mistakes than what I made. And I think that is part of the motivation, is like the ability to just go, wow, mate, that would have been me, and I can now help myself in a way. Coupled with like just the amount that I get to learn. I learn from every founder. They've got the energy, the enthusiasm. Some of them are amazing at product, or they're amazing at one thing that I'm not amazing at. And so I'm actually helping, but I'm learning. I learn about every vertical. How do I do marketplaces? How do I do B2B? How do I learn about the legal space? I'm now learning about plants. So that is something that keeps me very fresh, because I'm just always, here's a new thing, but within that I can start looking for the patterns of execution that apply across everyone, and use that to like level up myself to help them. So it's just I've slowly got into that position, but it's like I don't have to deal with big organizations with lots of politics. It's all small startups. And I was just thinking about this morning, like I go out into the world and I see that there's a pop-up shop from Appear Here, like the stickers are everywhere.
Amazing how fast they've grown.
And I go to someone's house and they've got plants from Platch, and I'm like, wow, these are all things that I've had a little hand in creating, and that's a nice feeling, right?
I can imagine. I mean, in terms of, we'll go to like a quick fire round. What's the most valuable purchase you've made under £100?
My Kindle.
Your Kindle?
Yeah.
I still use mine. It's great before bed.
I mean, I buy so many like non-fiction books. And I often dip into them as and when I need them. And it would be impractical to have it as physical books. So the Kindle just is perfect.
I normally ask, actually I'll ask it. What's a book that you would gift to a startup founder?
So actually, I'm a big fan of Lean Analytics.
Lean Analytics.
I think it's a really good book. It kind of covers a little bit more of the kind of the science of startups, and it's much more practical than the Lean Startup, which is more like a philosophical. Here's how you do Lean Startup, but it's not a very impractical one. Whereas Lean Analytics is quite a good practical version.
Are there any like it could be the same book, but like particular books on product that you really like?
Marty Kagan, who's like one of my gurus,
wrote
a book about how to build tech products that customers love.
Interesting.
And that's a great book just to understand like what a real product manager should be doing.
I'll have to purchase that tonight on my Kindle. What's the most valuable advice you've been given in your career? And it can pertain to personal and business.
If you want to be successful, don't be afraid to sleep on floors.
Interesting. Wow. Did you learn that during your first and second startup?
I did, and and I still like. I think I have to ask myself like how willing I was to do that or not. And I see like to be really successful, you have to be prepared to like risk it and
give it
everything.
What's been your most valuable failure?
Every time you go and try to do anything, you learn, you pick yourself up. And I think that the learning is that you don't give up, right? That's what I try to teach my kids, just don't give up. Just take the learning, bounce back up, go at it again. while sort of changing direction a little bit here and there, but don't wallow in it. You got to just pick yourself up and just tackle the next problem. And for a founder, that is the skill of all the skills, right? Grit. Just how you pick yourself up, because you're just going to get hit with them every day, and they'll change, and they constantly keep changing, but you'll get hit with them, and you've got to be able to just, you know, wake up, go and do some exercise, get the stress out.
Yeah. And final question, what kind of gives you the most relief in terms of doing your current job right now as a product partner at Forward?
As in outside of work?
At work.
As in what makes me happy?
What makes you most happy and relief and joyful in doing your current job right now?
So, you know, I love it when, for me, like, you know, when we get a company that comes in and they just got this like little idea or an idea, and they don't have any shape, and sometimes I go, I don't really have a clue how we're going to do this. And then it slowly, actually, we follow like the process, and we talk to customers, and we brainstorm, and we ideate, and we whittle them down, and then actually, like, at some point we launch something and people start using it, or they start buying stuff, and you're like, that's cool. And then they raise a seed round, and then like you go back to see them after 3 years, and they've got like, you know, 50 employees or whatever, and they're growing. You're like, wow, we did it, right? That happens. And for me, I think the most satisfying is like, of those pre-seed companies, about over 55% have all gone on to raise like Series A rounds.
Oh wow!
And I wouldn't have expected that when we first started. That stat would happen.
Does that kind of bode well to the kind of agency model Forward have, because you guys are kind of really putting in?
I'd say it's a combination of obviously, like, you know, can we attract good founders that come to us? Which is one part of it, but then I definitely feel like we help them execute better.
I guess that kind of marks the end of the interview. I mean,